Welcome back to another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. As always, I'm your host, Dean Simon. And before we get into everything, please make sure to leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe. We are still on the road to 2,000 subscribers. So if that's a journey that you feel compelled to follow along on, please consider pressing that big red button down below. Also, turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on future videos and future Milwaukee Bucks updates. All right, so we had a pretty jam-packed weekend, so we're going to get into everything. But first, I wanted to talk about the NBA Cup game and eventual win over the Chicago Bulls, which the big takeaway, aside from everything from a Milwaukee Bucks perspective, Josh Giddey is legitimately fantastic. I don't mean to, make the introduction of this whole episode just gushing over a player of an opposing team that the Bucks had gotten a huge win against, but Josh Giddey throughout the first three three and a quarter quarters of that game against the Bucks, he was a fantastic playmaker, and his evolution as a scorer and even off the dribble as a three-point shooter, though it's kind of a trick that he seldom uses. More of his looks are catch and shoot, but his overall transformation as a scorer, even without developing that much of a handle, is absolutely ridiculous. But what I will say, though, on the flip side, is with how the Bucks closed that game against Chicago, with how Milwaukee handled him towards the end and just completely shut him down towards the closing moments of that game, and then went on a huge run. And it's Ryan Rollins threes, Miles Turner getting buckets, Giannis catching alley oops, and just being the force that he usually is. It started on the defensive end, and you can credit Cole Anthony for that. You can credit even AJ Green kind of held up well in certain instances, and the Gary Trent Juniors, and of course Miles Turner and Giannis just kind of rotating in and out as the main rim deterrents in certain uh, packages when Nikola Vucevic was on the floor and Miles Turner had to go out to contest him at the 3 point line, then Giannis would kind of just slot in right where Miles Turner was standing, and there was just so many different cool little developments that happened towards the end of that game. And of course, Giannis finished with another 40 piece, and he was just completely unstoppable again, especially down the stretch. But it was really the defensive effort that led to the Bucks claiming that win and kind of like remaining undefeated in cup play for the last little while. So just an amazing victory. We of course got another excellent Ryan Rollins game on both ends of the floor, and when I've talked about his level of comfortability just consistently developing with the amount of opportunities that he's getting, of course being the consensus starting point guard now. Of course he's going to get more opportunities, but you can really tell that, or at least you could tell after that game, that his rhythm was just completely getting in tune as a lead ball handler and playmaker. And you could see it again, and I'll reference, really down the stretch of that game against Chicago, which was a fantastic one. It was a nail biter really all the way through until the final, 4.5 minutes or so. But Ryan Rollins in the pick and roll with Giannis, and the way that he was able to make great decisions even after leaving his feet, and, like one of the plays specifically towards the end where he's driving towards the rim with, on the right side of the basket, and he's kind of contemplating, do I go up on Vucevic with another defender trailing behind me? Or should I really take this shot even when I'm in an uncomfortable position? But no, he kind of threw the ball upwards with two hands and then lowered it to the side, dished it off to Giannis, and it was just a wide open dunk. So Ryan Rollins just getting more and more comfortable in this system and just developing that confidence as the lead ball handler was really one of the main takeaways of the game, of other than Miles Turner breaking out for his best scoring game as a Milwaukee Buck, and his most proficient or productive 3 point shooting game as a Milwaukee Buck, and coming away with 4 steals as well. Um, and honestly, something that I really liked from the Bucks in this game, especially down the stretch, was the ability to create second chance opportunities with not even just offensive rebounding, but just kind of making the effort to go for offensive rebounds, if that makes sense. Like there was one play towards the close of the game where I believe it was Miles Turner. I might be confusing it with Giannis, but they were both doing work towards the end of the game that, it makes it kind of hard to tell between them. But it was one of them, and it was just after a missed point blank layup. One of them came in and completely disregarded Nikola Vucevic's box out and just tapped at the ball, and then in the process drew a foul. and then it was either free throws or that they got the ball side out of bounds. But just putting in the effort to go for those offensive rebounds was really, really something that I loved from that game down the stretch, and of course led to the Bucks really pulling away and grabbing a pretty huge win over the then I don't know if the standings have changed just yet, but if anything, then the number one seeded team in the Eastern Conference. But we are going to have to talk about not necessarily a kind of day and night shift between the latest win and the latest loss, but the Houston Rockets took a game in Pfizer form against the Milwaukee Bucks 122-115, and this just felt like, as the segment says, that it's just one that got away, one that slipped away, that the Bucks, it felt like they were in control again in the final 4 or 5 minutes, but then there were several key turning points throughout, mostly in the fourth quarter, that led to Houston gaining all of this momentum. And then Alperen Şengün did his thing. I think he finished with what, like 25, 11, and 7 or something like that. And of course, the final play of the game, going behind the back on Giannis, coming back out and pulling it out and saying, let's slow down. Then just attacking the rim, killer spin move on Miles Turner for an and one finish. He was absolutely sensational. Kevin Durant was sensational as a playmaker too, and that's one of the big reasons why they were able to come away with this win, is that KD with 31 points and 7 assists. Previous to that game, I believe that they said it on the broadcast that he had averaged 2.5 assists per game, and just the way that he was able to get his guys involved after making himself into a scoring threat, that and drawing that kind of attention, it was just different than he had, like, the things that he had been able to do in the games leading up to the one against Milwaukee, that his passes were just more crisp, and guys like Tari Eason were like a little bit more consistent, and of course Reed Shepard had an amazing kind of breakout game, really, or at least the first one that he's had in like a cool 6 or 7 games for the Rockets this year. Reed Shepard played a huge role in the Rockets actually coming away with this win, because, and I've seen someone post this and make this kind of statement on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it nowadays, that Reed Shepard is such an interesting player because he clearly has so many necessary skills that can make him into maybe not a star, but a very, very good complementary piece on a good team. That he is an elite, and it's not, out of the realm of possibility to call him an elite 3-point shooter, especially how he was coming out of college. Elite 3-point shooter, but shooting 44% from twos compared to his 48% or so from three, which is ridiculous. But then also on the defensive end, he gets hunted constantly because of his stature. But the thing is, he has such great hands. He is a pretty awesome athlete for his size, and that allows him to get up and be a sneaky great shot blocker for his position, and again for his height. Um, and just his active hands, it really makes him into a pretty solid, or even, in the future, maybe going forward, a net positive defender, despite all the physical limitations that he has. But in this game against the Bucks, we saw Reed Shepard become an absolute irritant with his hands, even when the Bucks were hunting him on these mismatches. And then, of course, he started to get the offense going in the fourth quarter, make a couple of huge momentum plays for the Rockets. One that I forget if he had made an impact on the steal, if he kind of maybe had a deflection that ended up in a steal, and then it ended with him in hitting a transition corner three. But I feel like the turning point of this game was when Kevin Durant had the and one jumper kind of fading away over Gary Trent Jr. to make it, I think it was to make it a 111-110 game. Um, that was really the turning point of the game. Just again, in terms of momentum, it really felt as though the Rockets were starting to gain control, and that you could sense that maybe there was a chance they would pull away. Um, and actually on the topic, I guess we can move forward and just talk about the biggest issues that I feel like for the Bucks led to this loss. Number one, the rebounding and the inability to stop the Rockets, who granted are the best rebounding team in the NBA. And of course, last season they were one of the best rebounding and offensive rebounding teams of all time, especially when Steven Adams was on the floor. Um, the Rockets won the rebounding battle tonight 50-27. So they just got double the rebounds as the Milwaukee Bucks, so that's not good. But the thing is, it's absolutely unheard. 20 20 offensive rebounds to the Bucks, 27 rebounds in total. Just completely and utterly unacceptable. That cannot happen again, even against a team like this where they have the Steven Adams of the world, the Clint Capellas, the Jabari Smith Juniors, and the Amin Thompsons, the athletic freaks and also really big, strong, burly centers that are going to be snagging those rebounds. That just cannot happen. That was the game. That was the difference in this game. The second chance points, 20 offensive rebounds. That just cannot happen. So that's something that Giannis and Miles Turner, and just all the Bucks front court guys need to take pride in is their rebounding and ability to box out, especially against the Steven Adams of the world, where you're going to need multiple bodies committed to those guys. It just there needs to be team gang rebounding to quell any kind of momentum that the Rockets can gain from grabbing offensive rebounds and creating second chance opportunities. That's that's number one. But I feel like number two, and I feel like kind of the theme of this episode is both talking about in the Bulls game and now in the Rockets game is down the stretch that the key for the Rockets winning this game, I feel like, was taking advantage of their one-on-one opportunities and one-on-one mismatches and kind of just letting guys go to work. And like I said before with the KD shot over Gary Trent Jr., Ryan Rollins had stunted at KD and had given him a soft double and a soft trap or whatever. But then Ryan Rollins didn't want to leave Reed Shepard, who finished with 16 points on an efficient shooting night, and he didn't want to leave an elite 3-point shooter like him open. So then Ryan Rollins kind of abandoned the double team to go back to Reed Shepard, and then it allowed KD to work on Gary Trent Jr. a little more, turnaround, hit it, and one fadeaway. So my key issue here is that the Bucks should have been more committed to those double teams and just being more aggressive with their double teams. It felt like too many times down the stretch of this game that guys were like in the middle of what they wanted to do, or they kind of just didn't fully commit to a decision to aggressively trap a guy like Kevin Durant or a guy like Alperen Şengün, or kind of just standing in the middle and trying to also take away a passing lane or whatever. Because in the end, this also didn't work when KD got a switch with Miles Turner, and they just let Kevin Durant work at the top of the key against Miles, and it ended in an easy bucket for KD to further, you know, and increase the Rockets' odds of taking this game and help them gain even more momentum. And that just can't happen. They can't concede these kinds of switches so easily. And once these switches are conceded, they can't let guys like Kevin Durant work so freely towards the end. And even for a guy like Şengün, where you trust Giannis guarding him even out on the perimeter, um, but just the fact that another body wasn't sent at Alperen Şengün, and considering the makeup of this Rockets team, you would much rather, at least in my opinion, you would much rather send two bodies at a guy like Kevin Durant or a guy like Alperen Şengün, because the Rockets aren't the same kind of team as the Bucks, where they're not swing, knocking down threes at high rates or even taking threes at high rates. They you would rather take a chance on the Rockets maybe having an advantage by making skip passes and keeping it going, because they're not as keen on shooting open threes. So if you are the Bucks, if you're Doc Rivers and you trust your defense enough with kind of scrambling and rotating, that's the chance that you would want to take. You don't want to just let Kevin Durant work one-on-one and let him get wherever he wants, especially against the Miles Turners and Gary Trent Juniors of the world. You'd rather send an aggressive double and get it out of his hands and then trust your defense to scramble. And I feel like that just wasn't the game plan. That wasn't the decision that Doc Rivers went with. And I feel like it was the wrong one. And also, just this isn't listed there as the top reasons, but the free throws, completely unacceptable. Another game where you shoot a tick above 50% from the free throw line. And this is even in a game rarely where the Bucks shot more free throws, that they had more free throw attempts than their opponent. And they still shot about 53 or 58% from the free throw line, and the Rockets made maybe three more free throws. And all of this is the game. This is the game. So this is just the free throws, the inability to make succinct decisions with regard to traps and double teams towards the end, and the rebounding disparity. That was the game, and there's just no arguing it. But also for a Bucks team that going into the year, it's that, oh yeah, we know that we're one of the most accurate 3-point shooting teams in the league, but now it's just taking more, and outside of kind of Giannis barreling his way to the basket, we're kind of, starting to lean into the philosophy, like a Celtics based philosophy, where we're living and dying by the three somewhat. Like, we're not to that level, but it's more like that. And we're just trying to get the attempts up. Why are the Bucks only taking, what, 29 threes in this game? This just should not be that should be, but anywhere between 35 and 40 attempts from three on any given night. I should not, because the Bucks are knocking down like 48% of their threes on any given night with this current system and with this current roster and personnel. Why are they not shooting 43s a game? And call me crazy, but even on looks that might not be considered wide open, I would rather let AJ Green let it fly. Gary Trent Jr., Torian Prince, once he's back in the lineup, let them fly. Ryan Rollins, let them fly. Because this was the whole thing. It's just increasing the attempts, which could further lead to increased productivity from three. And I really I can't believe that the threes weren't being taken at a heavier rate, um, and just not committing to doubles on Durant and Şengün, and even a guy like Amen Thompson, who's a better passer. Well, not better passer than Şengün, but you know what I mean. Just getting the ball out of these guys' hands and banking on Jabari Smith Jr. making the play, or Tari Eason making the play, or Reed Shepard making the play, even though he did. But that's things you live with. But anyways, moving forward, the Dallas Mavericks, Cooper Flag are up next, and potentially with Anthony Davis rejoining the lineup. They had also said on the broadcast that, well, while this game or the result of this game stinks, at least you have the Dallas Mavericks tomorrow night. So and that's again potentially with AD in the lineup. So that's going to be a pretty decent test for just this new front court pairing of Miles and Giannis. Not saying that I don't think that they're still going to dominate the matchup, because those two as a tandem, of course, put them against any other front court in the NBA, and I'm liking my odds. But that's going to be a very interesting matchup, especially if Cooper Flag takes on less of a ball handling role against the Milwaukee Bucks than he has so far this season. Because as someone that's looking in from the outside, I feel like the Mavericks are just completely, they're not, it's tough because you want Cooper Flag to develop his point guard related skills and his ball handling, passing, and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like they're overtasking him and asking him to do too much too fast when he's 18 years old and 6'9", and he's still kind of figuring things out as a 18-year-old number one pick and like highly touted, potentially like generational talent. And they're just really like, when throwing him in the fire is a complete understatement. They're asking him to be their full-time point guard. And that's just not how things should go. So if Cooper Flag does not take on those kinds of point guard responsibilities with D'Angelo Russell now kind of in their starting lineup as their main point guard, that's going to be something too. And I'm excited. I'm really excited, honestly, for the Giannis Cooper Flag matchup in certain or instances, and in certain sequences that happen on the court. That's going to be something, because if it's anything like Giannis and Victor Wembanyama's first matchup, we're in for an absolute treat, but also a game that the Milwaukee Bucks should take. And even with Anthony Davis in the lineup, but yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Even after this very tough loss in a game that was very very winnable, but the Bucks, they know, at least I would hope that they know, just looking at the box score, where they went wrong, what they need to improve on, and I'm sure that, again, potentially going against a team with, Derek Lively and Anthony Davis and Daniel Gafford or whatever, the rebounding is going to be a major, major focus. So hopefully they'll take this as an opportunity to improve those things. But anyways, that'll be it for me today. Thank you very much for tuning into another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. Once again, I have been Dean Simon, and before you go, please leave that like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe. Also, turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on future Milwaukee Bucks updates. All right, I will see you guys in the next one. Go Bucks.